podcast is a member of WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
I'm Chuck Norris, and I approve this game.
Between the time when gamers played with miniatures and chainmail and the rise of the Wizards of the Coast, there was an age of advanced role-playing undreamed of. And onto the Skygax, destined to bear the jeweled crown of TSR upon a troubled brow, it was given to teach us all how to roll for initiative.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Okay, hi, this is Chad, and I am at Gamehole convention here in Madison, Wisconsin, and with me today is Alex Kramer. He is the person who's put the whole thing together, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the convention and a little bit about what he likes to do when it comes to gaming. Hey, Alex, how are you?
I'm great. Sunday morning of a con, so a little tired, but doing really well.
Well, how's the convention going? I mean, now that it's on day Sunday.
Well, I think I can answer that by a question. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time.
Well, that's really the benchmark for us. It's gone smashingly well. We took some time and put together a detailed comment card, and we baited people to fill it out by tempting them with a free pass for next year. So we've gotten a tremendous array of data from a lot of people, and it's been overwhelmingly positive, and the spoken comments have been great, and our special guests have been thrilled. So it has really gone off as well as something this complicated could have gone off.
Well, and I want to get into the convention here in just a moment, but why don't we just start off by talking a little bit about who is Alex Kramer? How did he get into gaming? What is he like?
You bet. Well, I am a guy in my mid-40s, so Dungeons & Dragons, just like so many of your listeners, was my portal, my gateway drug to gaming. So I can sit here and I can remember so clearly the library in my middle school and my friend who asked me to play Dungeons & Dragons, which I'd never heard of, and he had the red box, and I remember he was opening it and looking at the oddly shaped dice, and his explaining it to me, in retrospect, not exactly accurately, but we played, and it was fun, and that changed, quite frankly, the trajectory of so many of my interests. Started reading fantasy literature, science fiction literature, and spun from there, and I've played some sort of role-playing game since then, always.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I talk to a lot of gamers, one of the things that does come up a lot of the time is that when they started playing role-playing games, particularly Dungeons & Dragons, is that it did really spark an interest in reading at that time. Mm-hmm. I know I became just a bookworm after I started playing Dungeons & Dragons, and I think that really helped a lot. And like you said, I think it's really guided a lot of my interests later on in life. But let me ask you this. When you were gaming, as you got into gaming, what were some of the games that you most enjoyed playing?
Yeah, the things I most enjoyed playing were the longer campaigns with real stable gaming friends, so that we had, a year or two of a campaign that progressed. Just wonderful memories of those things in those games. Mostly first edition D&D, although I had the good fortune to have a long talk with Zeb Cook, one of our guests at our convention here, about second edition, which is quite frankly my favorite edition. There are a few things that are not great about it, but it took a lot of the problems that we had with first edition and sort of cleaned them up, and that was probably the best campaign we ever had. That expanded. Gosh, that covered probably 4 years, and we played I think just about every Forgotten Realms product that there's out there, and we played the hell out of that stuff, and so that was great fun for us.
Well, I know actually that's I could tell that you guys have played a lot of the different products because you were kind enough to show me your Sanctum, the game room.
Yep.
And I noticed you had almost everything in there.
Yeah. So we're sitting at Gamehole Con, and that is kind of a strange name, and I'm sure the listeners are wondering, how would you come up with a name like that? Well, the Gamehole is actually a place. That's our game room, and it's called the Gamehole because it started in my basement. So it was subterranean, and we're all Hobbit fans, and so as I'm sure most of you will recall, how the Hobbit starts, describing a Hobbit hole, and that's how we came up with that name. And it's been so named for the last 15 years. So since then, I have gotten into some different business things, and I am now I have an interest in a pub, and as part of that, it's an old building, and I was able to convince my partners that some upstairs suite of rooms should be mine to convert into a game room, and I did, and spent some money and built essentially the tree house I always wanted, the dream room that when I was 12, thinking, gosh, if I could someday have a game room, and that's what we have. So I appreciate the compliment.
Well, it's a great game room. I noticed you had was that a Geek Chic table?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. It's actually Monty Cook's table. Monty Cook, the architect of 3.5 and Numenera and lots of other things, he lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he designed this table, had it built. And then he moved to, I think, first Seattle. Maybe it was LA first. But anyway, he couldn't move this thing. It's massive, big table. But for those of you out there who have gone to conventions and seen the Geek Chic tables, or at least maybe someone's lucky enough to own one, Monty takes credit, at least in his own mind, for giving them the idea of how to do their tables. So it's very much like a Geek Chic table. It's got pull-out platforms. It has little pull-out shelves that hide underneath the table. There are rolling bookshelves that go underneath the table. It basically looks like a craps table, but instead of felt, obviously, it's squares, magnetic
grids.
Squares. Yeah, grids.
What else for a gamer?
Yep, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. So now the game room itself then in part inspired the name of the convention.
It did, exactly. So that's when we were coming to the point of deciding we wanted to do a convention, there could only be one name. That was, if it was not going to be named after our game room that we've spent so much time in the last, again, 15 years, we weren't going to do it. So that's how the game.
Well, I'm glad you could get them to agree to that then, because this has been a really nice convention. And so tell me a little bit about the genesis of the Gamehole convention. When did the idea first hit you guys to do this? What goes into? I know a lot of people are interested sometimes in even putting on their own conventions, and they're not really sure the process that goes into it. Can you go into that?
Yeah. Let's see. We'll start with the genesis of why. We're sitting in Madison, Wisconsin. Madison's a great town, college town, local, the state government. I think because of those factors, we have a unique demographic. We lead the country in per capita game stores. We have a total in Dane County, where Madison sits, population right around 300,000 people. We have 8 separate standalone legitimate game stores. We're not talking about a Barnes & Noble with a little section. 8 standalone game stores, which is tremendous. I mean, consider that London has 2. It's amazing. So what's weird about that, though, so you'd think, okay, well, you have all these, obviously a lot of gamers. You have these game stores that are all profitable, but no convention, no real convention. We have some conventions here, but they are, and there's some gaming at them, but they're not focused on tabletop gaming. And we, the members of the Gamehole, are all about tabletop gaming. We do a lot of role-playing games. We also play board games. So it was an obvious gap. And I think for years, part of it is because Gen Con used to be in Milwaukee. And since that was such a great convention, there was no real need to have a convention here in Madison. Well, as everyone knows, Gen Con left Milwaukee and headed to Indianapolis, and nothing has happened really in South Central Wisconsin since then. Other than Gary Con. Gary Con started 5 years ago, and that's in the Lake Geneva area, which is about an hour and a half from here. So that's how we started talking about it. I said, why don't we have a tabletop gaming convention here? And we thought, well, here we are. We have 8 members of the Gamehole. We're all professionals in different fields. Some of us have actually been associated with other conventions assisting, and we started putting together sort of a list. What would it take to put together a convention? And then we were just it was more actually just joking about it at first. We thought, wouldn't it be fun to do that? And then I guess I decided, you know what, let's stop screwing around. Let's actually make some effort. Let's explore what it takes to run a convention. And so what we started with doing was listening to people who had already done so. One person I'd like to thank specifically is Harold Johnson. Harold, if some of you probably recognize the name, he authored one of the Slaver series modules. I think he authored C2. He's an old TSR employee. He's the guy who actually was hired Frank Mentzner. I mean, he's a longtime TSR guy, and he ran Gen Con for, I think 5 years. He was the guy who really put it all together. Harold's a wonderful guy, and he's willing to share. And so I had lunch with him a couple times, and he laid it out for me what he thought were the key components.
What do you think some of those key components are?
Well, really, it's there's nothing really shocking about it. It's just like any other business. You have to first of all figure out what it is you want to accomplish, whatever that good or product is. Here, we wanted to have an excellent tabletop gaming experience so that the GMs, players, and special guests all walked away saying, that was really fun, that was great. So, okay, how do we get to that? Well, we've all attended cons, and we know what we like and we don't like. Good space, ability to get into games, first of all, ability to get to our games easily, a variety of games. So what we did is, first is finding a facility. It's the biggest failing of restaurants, for example. What they do, someone has an idea of a type of food they want to put on, but they don't think about the place that they want to put it. So what happens, they have an idea of a great menu, and they try to force it on a location that doesn't work, and they invariably go out of business. You got to do the reverse. You got to find a location first. So that's what we did. Spent a lot of time talking to area hotels, a lot of meetings, and finally we landed at the Sheraton, Madison Sheraton, which afforded us some great opportunities because, as Chad, you can attest to, it is not a huge hall, one big hall. Most hotels are set up to run weddings. So they have a big hall that's maybe divisible with some partitions. Here they have hallways with, they call them breakout rooms. They're meeting rooms, various sizes. So we took all of those, and they vary from the smallest one will take probably 3 72-inch round tables, so that'll seat 8 players, up to a room that will take about 15. So we had all, probably 4 or 5 of each of these kind of rooms, and we were able to break out then. We envisioned it, okay, we can do a Magic the Gathering room, we can do a board game room, we can do a Pathfinder Society room, we can do a general RPG room, we could do a games library, and it's not, then there's one of my biggest complaints, as much as I love Gen Con, is the din, the noise. It's very difficult to actually play there.
Very loud.
Yeah. And you have to be right next to the GM and hope that you can hear. And that's, it's still fun and it's a great time. But, if we had the ability to control that, why not? And we did. So that's why this facility worked well. So then we had the facility. From there, it is, there are 2 real big challenges. First, letting people know that you have a convention.
Getting the word out.
Getting the word out. And there's the only solution for that. There are 2 solutions, I guess. You could, if you have a huge war chest and you can spend a lot of money on traditional advertising. I don't think that's effective because the gaming community is very hyper niched, and so going through traditional media, you're 95% ineffective. So you're spending a lot of money and not targeting your audience. So for us, it was going to other conventions, going to other local game days, getting other people in the community, game organizers invested in the project. And so our message was, we're doing this convention because we love gaming. We are not interested in trying to do this for profit. All we want to do is create a haven and a celebration of tabletop gaming to support local gaming. So and we have a lot of good local gaming groups, and we asked, after talking to those folks, they were excited about it because they wanted to be part of it. So I guess the message was, this is your con. This is not a bunch of guys who are selfishly putting on some sort of little show as, look what we can do. This is Madison and South Central Wisconsin and the Midwest. And that's what our reach was. We're trying to be the upper Midwest's leading gaming convention. Come and be part of it. So people were receptive to that.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Dead Game Society actually met you at GaryCon last year. And we were very impressed, and we're still very impressed. I know we've run a couple of games here, and we've really enjoyed it. The setup that you guys have is very conducive to running games. And the crowd is really great. Really good gamers here, so I think you've done a really good job with that.
We can't thank you enough for that. And the Dead Game Society has been outstanding. Again, sight unseen, you run into two of us at a convention. We have some flyers, and we say we're doing a convention, and you guys come up from out of state and willing to take us at our word. And I'm glad that you have that experience and that it was fulfilled, because and that's what it was. You have to be a little bit of a salesman, and without being a salesman, you're not being smarmy.
A little Barnum and Bailey,
a little bit, and say, just trust us. This is going to be great. Come on. And so and that's why, again, like the Dead Game Society or Madison Traditional Gaming and all these groups that are wonderful.
You have the Pathfinder Society.
Pathfinder Society. It's the lifeblood of a con. Of course, it's gaming. So after you start getting the word out, contemporaneous with that, as that's going along, you have to get people willing to run games.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
So
you've had some other great guests here too.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned Harold Johnson, who I spoke to quite some length last night. Really enjoyed that conversation. But you also, I noticed, I saw Frank Menser here. I saw Tom Wham. What goes into getting such, well-known figures within the game world?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I should probably back up. That was one of the biggest things that we did early on, is get a few of those guys enlisted and interested. Ernie Gygax, Tom Wham, Jim Ward, Frank Metzner. Those were the four that we got early on. So when we were talking to folks like the Dead Game Society, we could say, we've got Tom Wham and Frank Metzner and Jim Ward coming. And so that automatically, okay, these guys are not just full of nonsense.
Oh, yeah, that makes us go, wow.
Okay, exactly. So we had instant legitimacy by getting those guys. And we have quite frankly, an unfair advantage here in South Central Wisconsin, as those guys live here. So they are willing to... They're such unbelievable gamers. These are guys who, there was no money in gaming when they started. They did it purely because they love gaming, and so they don't care about really they're willing to go to any convention because they can play. All they want to do is play games. It's amazing. It's been an amazing experience, which is so different from I think gamers, people who work for gaming companies now, there's a lot of money in gaming, and so people who like gaming, they're still gamers, but not as pure as those guys are. You hear what they talk about in the 70s at TSR, they were not making any money, but anyway, so that's why they're willing to jump on board with this, because they're all about local gaming. So once they got on board, and it was simply reaching out to them through Facebook. That's how we reach these guys. So then once we had those guys, we were able to reach out to Zeb Cook, who's in Baltimore. And Zeb now has been out of tabletop gaming for the last 15 years. I don't know if you folks know this, but he's been one of the main archetypes behind the Elder Scrolls and the Oblivion games and so on. So he's been he's transitioned into the video game world.
Okay.
So he had been out of tabletop gaming completely. In fact, he wasn't even playing. He said, was talking to him, he said he was sick of it for a little while. He didn't even pick up a tabletop game.
Just got kind of burnt out on it.
Yeah. So I think he said 5 or 6 years he didn't even do anything in it. So he was just focusing on the computer gaming side of things. And just the last couple of years, he started playing again with friends and so on. So when I reached out to him, it was a total, what the hell, I'll come. So again, because we had a bunch of his old colleagues here, he thought if nothing else, it'll be sort of a fun reunion. Sure. So he was willing to fly out from Baltimore. That's where he's living now. And then from there, we thought, okay, so we've got the old guard TSR guys that really make us happy. We're all old role players, so this is going to be great for us. But let's think about what our potential audience would like to see as well. So one of the suggestions was, let's reach out to Wizards of the Coast and see if we can get a new designer for D&D, because as I'm sure most of you know, D&D has gone through many changes, and they're on the cusp of releasing a new rule set. So
another one.
Yes, 5e, or D&D Next, as it's called. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to get one of those guys out here to explain, first of all, why 4e, and now why 5e, and what's that going to look like? So we did, and that was just the contact at Wizards. Is anyone, who can we talk to about this? And they put us in touch with a marketing person, and they got back to us and said Chris Perkins, who is known as the GM to the Stars, was willing to come out and be with us here. He is the lead designer of D&D Next, and I've never met him before, and he's a very impressive individual, extremely bright, extremely dedicated to D&D, and he recognizes and acknowledges how much this means to so much of us, and he feels the same way. He sees himself as a trustee of something that's extremely valuable, and he does not want to damage it. So I can share that I've had some fun talks with him about D&D Next. He was not able to give us release dates, but he gave us a lot of other details in the rule system. And I know I'm drifting a little bit.
That's all right.
But
it's very interesting, actually.
I hope so. But it sounds great. I'm really excited.
It's a really insightful idea, too, to have somebody here who can personally, address any questions or concerns from the fan base, in a very educated manner on the topic. And from what you're describing, it sounds like he's a great guy who, feels like he's been passed the baton and is going to try to, carry it well.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to be, they're trying to come up with a system that is a unifying edition. So those of us who like first edition and second edition will be very comfortable in this, and there'll still be some of the best things about the more recent editions, but much more streamlined. So I'm excited. So he was a great guest, and I can't thank Chris enough for that's a total leap of faith. He actually he'd never been to Madison, and he wanted to come and see what Madison was like too, so that worked in our favor. But he ran several tables of play tests, so some very lucky attendees got to play games with him. And then he gave 2 panel discussions which were very entertaining. Part of the reason was one of our other guests was the personality known as Bill Cavalier, the Dungeon Bastard.
Oh, yes. I met him. Very, very funny guy.
Yep. Those of you who follow his YouTube channel, he every week releases another video clip, and they're really funny. And we think he's a riot. So we reached out to him, and he was willing to do it. He's He's a true gamer, loves tabletop gaming, and he runs his own Insurmountable Gauntlet of Doom, which is just an over-the-top wacky thing that he runs people through. And he was willing to come out and run that for people here, in addition to doing panel discussions. So probably the highlight, and I know I'm drifting, I'm not really answering your question, for me, though, was...
You're answering my question.
The panel discussion with Chris Perkins and Tom Lommel, who plays the Dungeon Bastard, Bill Cavalier, was very good friends with Chris. So they sat together, and it was very entertaining how Tom would ask questions and Chris would answer them. So as this amusing colloquy discussion's going on, Frank Mensner walks in, sits down, and raises his hand, and it was just a surreal cross-hatching of D&D culture. And they started talking about organized play. Is Wizards of the Coast going to do an organized play like the RPGA? Because that's, as maybe most of you know, that Frank, that was his baby. He, in 1981, basically started the RPGA and then wrote all the initial materials for it. And so he's very vested in RPGA. That's a thing that's very important to him, and he wants to see that come back. Anyway, it's fascinating watching this discussion between these three guys, and we got to watch it. So, to round out the guests, we had Bill Cavalier. The final guest that came from far away was Jen Page.
Yeah, I went to her reading last night. She did a reading from The Hobbit. Very great.
Yeah, Jen Page, she's a really great gal. She's, again, a real gamer. She's a celebrity in the gaming world. She is in the series Geek Seekers. She did the movie Project London. So she's doing
Darkness Rising.
Darkness Rising. Yep. Thanks for reminding me of that one. So anyway, she has a huge fan base. And we thought it'd be fun for her to come out here, and she was great enough to agree. So she came out and she ran. And here's the one stipulation that we had with any special guests. You have to be willing to do a panel discussion or at least a short talk, and you had to run games. That was the way we could justify the expense associated with it. So she had never been asked to do that before. She is a very pretty gal, so she usually comes and poses and does autographs and all that kind of stuff, but she'd never been asked to run a game before, and she loved it. So she ran Call of Cthulhu.
Call of Cthulhu.
She had a couple of Call of Cthulhu games. So when early registration opened up, those games sold out in an eye blink.
I
mean, they were gone immediately. I mean, that we were joking about it. That would have been a ticket that had street value. I mean, we could have scalped those. It was hilarious how fast they went, and so and the people who played the games had a great time. So anyway, we had people who came to our con had the opportunity to play in Jim Ward's games, Bill Cavalier's games, Chris Perkins' games, Jen Page's games, Zeb Cook's games. I mean, it was amazing, the array of games that people could play in. Ernie Gygax's original hobby shop. And they were all so gracious that when tickets started selling out, they said, well, I'll do another slot of it. I'll do it again. So unlike, any other con I've been to, a very high percentage of our attendees got to play in what we call a special event game.
Sure.
If you wanted to, basically you could. If you wanted to play in a Frank Menser game, it was going to happen. Or whatever turned you on, and so that's what we wanted. That's what we wanted. We want to have the attendees to go away with an experience that they've never had before, and likely never can at any other con. GaryCon is one of those that you can do that too, but they sell out so fast.
Right, and they're getting pretty big now, and I think that's one of the best things about going to a smaller con is that you do get that kind of personal feel. You feel like you have a better connection, a better meeting with one of the people that you've always wanted to meet, ask questions to. It's not just you're standing in a line waiting for him to sign something. You're actually seeing them in the hallways. You're getting to sit down and roll dice with them. And you feel like you know their name and they know your name, and you're almost on a first name basis with one another.
And they know that coming to a smaller con, that's the way it's going to be, and they love it. They clearly loved it. They would stop in the hall and talk to anyone who wanted to talk to them, give them as much time as needed, except for if they had to get to a game they're about to run. All our guests were so gracious and so wonderful with our attendees, and it has been reflected in what attendees have been telling us about how great of a time they've had, and so it's been just a tremendous success. We couldn't be happier with how it's all gone. And from attendance standpoint, a small con that means different things to different people, but here we are in our first year, and we're going to be right around 500 attendees, so which is a great size for us.
Yeah, and when I say small con, actually when I was, because this is the first year for Gamehole, and it doesn't feel like a first year for a convention. It feels like you guys have been doing this for a few years.
That was our goal. We're not going to have this is going to be our first year, but it's not going to be a first year con. We're going to skip the small con, learning how to properly do this kind of phase. So we spent a lot of time thinking our way through problems, how to properly slot games, how to make sure GMs get to where they need to be at the right time, how to make sure that they get, tickets are handled properly, badges are handled properly, systems. And here's the one for those of you who are, I wouldn't say foolish enough, but who are ambitious enough to want to run a con, just don't do it yourself. Just please don't think one person can do it. You just simply can't if it's going to be a quality product. It's a function of collaboration for a couple reasons. One, there's just so much to do, and two, to see problems as a group that you could never do on your own. Just here's an example. We're in a hotel. It's a typical hotel. They have 2 restaurants and a bar. Well, we thought, okay, that's great, and they're happy to have. Of course, they're going to sell food, and people are going to stay here. We sold out our hotel block. A week before the convention, one of the guys said, "Are we going to have enough food resources to feed all these people?" And I thought, oh man, that's going to be a real problem, because we're in a hotel. You don't want to have to drive somewhere. You have a game that's going to start in 15 minutes. That's no good. So
not to mention if you've had a few drinks during the game, if it's later at night.
Yep. So the solution that one of the guys came up with is, why don't we invite some food carts? And Gen Con just did that this year. So we in Madison, we fortunately have a good food cart culture. And I reached out to some folks last week, and they said, "You have hungry gamers? We're interested." And so we had 5 food carts that parked outside. And again, this is a last-second thing. We've gone through. We were grinding over how the badges are going to look.
Really, because it just seems so well organized. Yeah. It's hard to believe that it was a last minute.
That was last minute, and it has been one of the most popular features of our con. People have loved all kinds of things, but our comment cards, everyone says, love the food carts.
Oh yeah, I had a barbecue beef brisket sandwich yesterday, and today I could go out and have falafels.
Yeah, and that worked out outstandingly. So again, that's just a blind spot. That if you're doing something without a collaborative effort, and or if you haven't done it before, that's a likely fail. And here we are sitting Sunday morning, and we were just talking about it. The group of us, we have 8 guys who are working on 9 guys. We can't think of something that was a big problem. We have a list and another thing we did is we had a list in our sort of war room or our staging room that as something occurs to us that we could do better or change, write it down. So we have a list of minor things, and there's things like more trash cans or whatever, just small things like that, but nothing big. No plane crash into the mountain kind of problems. And so that
sounds great.
Yeah.
So where do you see Gamehole in the next 3-5 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. We were talking about that. So here we have around 500 attendees. That's great. We're going to grow next year, undoubtedly. We're going to double our space. We already have a contract. It's going to be November 7, 8, 9 at the Madison Sheridan here in Madison, Wisconsin. We're doubling our space, taking the second floor, so a big ballroom up there, and we're going to convert that into a very large dealer hall. Because we have a dealer hall down in the first floor. It's a very nice dealer hall, but we can use that space for more gaming then, and take that and upstairs and have a really just blowout dealer hall. That'll be outstanding. So that's going to be great, and undoubtedly we're going to be at probably 50% more, maybe even double in attendance next year. It's possible. So
I could totally see it.
Yeah, because I think again people have been so positive and so happy that. And our special guests have been on social media the entire time talking about how much they liked it. And so I just would be surprised if we do nothing but grow, and not insignificantly. I think we'll see a big growth next year. The more interesting question is, what do we do in 2 years or 3 years? Because if it grows a lot more than that, this facility is not going to work.
Right.
We're going to be at maxed out. I mean, already the parking is a problem.
Yeah, I actually am parked in the hinterlands of the parking lot.
Yeah, and so that's something we have to address for next year. So for 2015, that's going to be a more interesting question. And we have a very nice convention center here in Madison that's right on the lake. It's the Monona Terrace, it's called, a Frank Lloyd Wright inspired structure. And it's big, and you can do all kinds of things there. It's a true convention center, so there are hotels attached to it with skywalks and all that kind of stuff. And that would be the next step. But we're not sure we want to take that step. That's bigger is not necessarily better, as we were talking about with Gen Con. So when we talked about that, if we get to the 2,000, 3,000 attendee, that's about where we want to go, I think. Because there are several reasons for that. We are not doing this in an effort to make money.
Right.
It's just not our goal. And because of that, we have other jobs where we actually do support our families with. So it can't be so big to the point where it's really
taking over your real job.
Yeah, we can't do that, and so there's that problem, and so then what we're left with is hiring people, I guess, to start to be employees of the convention, and I just don't think we want to do. Maybe we will. Maybe in 3 years we're going to figure it out, and we're going to want to hire a manager type, But we don't have ambitions of being the next Gen Con. Let's put it that way. We're just not interested in doing that. We don't want to be a corporate gaming convention. We want this experience we had this year, maybe exactly like this. That people have the same experience, the same feeling, they have the same takeaway, but just so more people can do it.
Sure.
And as long as we can do that, and as long as we have the support of the local gaming groups and the game stores and all the local gamers, then we'll keep doing it. But once it gets to the point where we're selling major spots of the hotel to different publishers, we're just not going to do that, because there are people who already, and I'm not ripping on Gen Con. Gen Con's a great time. It's a wonderful convention, but there is already that's a thing already, and there are several others around the country that are that. So there's no need for it. We want to be a mid to larger con, but not massive.
Okay. Well, I think you guys are well on the way. It's been wonderfully planned. My friends, we have had a great time running games here. We've had a great time playing games here, and I'm excited already about next year.
Yeah, we are too. So, folks who are interested, it is Gamehole Con, Gamehole, HOLECON.com. So any Google search will find it. The site is there. It'll be updated this week with the new dates, new artwork, and all that kind of stuff. We're already talking to. We do things like we commission an artist every year to do a print. We had Terry Pavlett, who was an old TSR guy, did a really cool dragon.
Yeah, I saw that. That's really nice.
Yeah, it's a dwarf fighting a white dragon in a snowstorm. It's awesome print. We're going to do something like that, and we'll sell 25 of them.
No doubt. So
we're already working on that. Is it going to be Jeff Easley next year, or Jeff D, or someone like that is going to do our print for next year? We're off and running, and so 2014 is set, and it's going to be great. I'm really excited about it.
Well, I tell you what, to anybody listening to this, I highly suggest, if you can get to Gamehole next year for the convention, it's gamehole.com.
Gameholecon.com.
Gameholecon.com.
Right. There you go.
So check it out. And make sure you get your tickets early, because this is going to be I really think this is going to be a nice rising star in the convention circuit.
I appreciate the kind words.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Me too. Thank you.
The Roll for Initiative podcast is a production of Wild Games Productions in association with D20Radio.com. You can visit us at rfipodcast.com or contact us on our forums at osrgaming.org, or even by calling us at 570-865-4210. This podcast is produced for entertainment purposes only. All other uses are prohibited. And remember, if your magic missile spell doesn't automatically hit, you're playing the wrong edition. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative.